Hi everyone, my name's Pieta Valentine. I've written 2 books, The Resident's Voice from a Dementia Unit and The Resident's Rise from a Dementia Unit. Today's session is how to increase concentration for dementia residents with quotations. Okay, now concentration is the really big thing that we have to garner with dementia residents. That's the first and primary subject, first and primary effort that needs to be established for progress to happen on any level with people with dementia. And the next series of videos I'll explain about how that progresses through. But it's actually the most important thing, it's the most difficult thing as well. Getting concentration, improving concentration, even establishing and starting the whole process of concentration. The first thing that you have to garner is interest. Interest, because it's once you've captured the interest of the person, then they will start making the effort to concentrate so they can learn. So the big effort is to actually be able to find what that topic is that will capture that interest, so the person will then make the effort and discipline themselves to concentrate and focus on that, start learning, enjoy it, then it becomes, established, and the path, the path of progress is on its way. So there's different ways to establish concentration, but I'm just going through them one by one in this series of Easter videos on concentration. Okay, so quotations. Now, the quotations I'm going to go with today are from the Queen. Now, in New Zealand, the residents of this generation, late 80s, early 90s, early 80s, mid 80s, majority, some late 80s, early 90s, they all love the Queen. Their life has been parallel to the Queen's life. They absolutely adore her. So if you can get something interesting, new, novel, captivating about the Queen, you've pretty much made it. Now, in terms of topics, you can't just, to harness concentration, you can't just go on and on and on about the same thing. The whole thing about concentration is that you need newness, variety being the spice of life. Because the intellect needs to have lots of new, novel, interesting, capturing information to sort of chew on, digest, and then get, realization through it. So that's why it takes quite a bit of effort from the activity coordinator or the relative or whoever it is that's establishing this concentration program. Quite a bit of effort has to go into the preparation of all this, but there are easier ways to get support with this, which I'll also explain in the future videos. Okay, so quotations and the Queen. I'll just read out a few because are the favourite ones of the residents. Okay, I've written these ones down. So, grief is the price to pay for love. Well, the residents, of course, most of them being female, practically all their husbands had died. Maybe a couple had husbands, 2 or 3 might have had husbands that came along that lived in the same village, but the majority, their husbands had passed on. So every now and then you had to acknowledge that, yes, it's important to acknowledge that, not to deny it, that their husband has gone. Some people think that it's best not to talk about it because they will have forgotten about it anyway, but they actually, especially if they bring it up. You may not bring up the topic if they're not thinking about it or acknowledging it, but if they do say, yes, grief is the price to pay for love. Yes, my husband has died and he was a lovely man, and we had a lovely time and we travelled together, and let them have their little bit. It's good. Actually, it's a way of conversing, communicating, getting the cognition going, getting the concentration garnered. Yeah, it's good. Whatever the residents come up with when you bring anything to the table, whatever they come up with, harness it and draw out, tease out as much as you can from them and from associated comments from the group. That's the whole point of it. Okay, so that one is the grief one. then of course you can pretty much start the topic of the day with the one they all love, and everyone remembers this, don't they? The beautiful young queen saying, "I declare before you that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong." Now, everybody knows, you know, like the Queen or not, and in New Zealand, everyone loves the Queen of this generation. Her dedication, her sacrifice, her effort, remarkable. She never faltered, you know, never faltered. And the third one, which is really, I found this really interesting myself, it is all to do with the training. This is from the Queen. It is all to do with the training. You can do a lot if you are properly trained. Yeah, now look at that. Of course, she had her father, her mother, who trained her, and she was giving compliment to them because of that, and other relatives. And the residents used to say, we like this training. Actually, this work that I'm presenting to you and explaining to you in these videos, the residents used to say they called them the training workshops, and they like that. It's like, it's not exactly school, but it's more like training. And of course, those that had been sporty like the fact that it was training, because everything's about fitness and discipline and physical strength, mental strength, you know, physical power, mental power, get the thinking going, you know, whether it's physical stamina or mental stamina, it's the same effort, similar in a way, isn't it? Except with concentration, you've got to think, you know, actually, when you concentrate, like if you concentrate, like it is all to do with the training. Once you start thinking about that, it is all to do with the training. Okay, so therefore, what is this training, this mental training, this mental thinking? And the residents used to say, it's important for the topics to be meaty. They used to call them meaty, but something you can digest, think over, mull over. And once you start to do that with your intellect, through that other channel of thinking, being aware, of course, that the mind's chaotic with someone that's got dementia, you know, mental stress, mental anxiety, dementia stress, the whole works, no memory, no direction orientation. I mean, that's chaotic. So they've got to think through this other aspect of their, you know, psychology, the intellect, which we all have, but we don't tend to use it enough. We often think that the intellect is relegated to Socrates and Einstein types. But of course we all have an intellect. I mean, we all have eyes, we all have a mouth, we all have the senses, we all have a mind, we all have an intellect. But if you don't use it, just like the muscles, if you don't use it, you lose it, or it becomes dormant. And of course, with all our social media dominance in the world, our lovely social media, which we all love, but can dominate, you know, the mental spheres, the intellectual, the mental spheres, the intellectual spheres gets dampened down when we become so bombarded with it. So that's why concentration and focus gives that depth. And with that depth of thinking comes silence and stability in our thinking. And then that's when we get the calmness and the quietness and the happiness. And that's why the residents love this work. They love to concentrate. They love the workshops because at last, their mind, you know, their mind would silence because the intellect was silencing it through this depth of thinking. Same experience as when you're reading a fabulous book, you know, you're absorbed in it, you know, and you're in another world, and your thinking calms right down, and you just go into that beautiful experience of reading a beautiful book. But you do need concentration to read. We all know that. And if we get too hyped up with social media, it can be difficult to concentrate and to read, and we often lose the interest in it. So it's important to keep that interest in the reading and the concentration, not just for dementia residents, but also for ourselves. But this is a way today with the quotations from the Queen as to how, for those people out there, for those dementia residents out there that love the Queen especially, harness this and work on those quotations, or another, you know, person that they idolize. Similar process applies. Thank you for your likes and subscriptions. Happy Easter.